This is another edition of Berkshire Education Now with my co-host, Quinn Bernal. My name is Andrea Wadsworth, and today we are very fortunate to have the people involved with the Portrait of a Graduate. And if you haven't heard what that is, we're about to show you and inform you on some really great things that are happening in Berkshire County. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Quinn, and he's going to introduce our guest today.
Yeah, hi there, everybody. My name is Quinn Bernal, and it is a pleasure to have you watching us today. And it's a pleasure to have our Portrait of a Graduate team with us today. We're just going to go around and do a little bit of introductions. I'll go ahead and say their last name, and then they'll unmute themselves and just give a little bit about themselves and tell you who they are. So we'll start off with Dr. Eberwein.
Well, hi, Quinn and Andrea. Thanks for inviting us to be here. So my name is Jake Eberwein. I'm a long-term county educator, and I am serving as the project manager for the Berkshire County Education Task Force, and am obviously connected to this amazing team that's with us today.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Sharon?
Thanks for having us. My name is Brendan Sharon. I'm Vice Principal of Teaching and Learning at Pittsfield High, and I'm the core facilitator for the Central Region, which encompasses Pittsfield High and Taconic High.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Roberts-Morandi?
Hi, I am Dr. Kimberly Roberts-Morandi. I, like Dr. Eberwein, am also a longtime educator in Berkshire County. I am currently serving as the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment for North Adams Public Schools, and as the core facilitator for the North Berkshire region, which is encompassing Drury High School and Bart Charter.
Amazing. And Mrs. McAvoy?
Hello, thank you for having us today. I am a teacher at Lee Middle and High School. I'm also the English Department Chair, and I am the core facilitator for the Lee region for Portrait of a Graduate.
Great, well, thank you all so much for being here with us today. So we're going to start off with Dr. Eberwein. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you and your group are doing and your goals?
Sure, thank you. It's great. Appreciate the time again to explain this today. So we're involved in a grant through the Barr Foundation. The Barr Foundation is a large foundation which exists in Boston, and they serve educational investments across the Northeast and really across the nation. They're very interested in elevating the quality of education and the experiences that students and faculty and communities have. So this particular grant, the Portrait of a Graduate, is focused on the high school grades. And we have 5 high schools involved in the project. You just heard who they are, but I'll just repeat them. It's Lee, Pittsfield High, Taconic High, Drury High School, North Adams, and Bart Charter School. So these 5 schools are actually looking at really asking the questions around what's happening in their high school. You know, what kinds of things are they excited about? What kinds of things do they aspire to? And what kinds of things are possible. Ultimately, the questions we're asking have to really relate to what kinds of skills, knowledge, and dispositions and experiences, for that matter, do we want students to have before they graduate from high school, so that they're well prepared for college, career, and for life. And so the Barr Foundation is really interested in thinking past kind of the traditional model of how we do high school, and think really more progressively and more relevantly in terms of how can we do things so that it's fully aligned with this contemporary world within which we exist. So we have a couple of key essential questions, which I'll just share with you, and then I'm sure the team is going to be able to highlight particular things that we're up to. But one question is, what are the knowledge, skills, and dispositions our students will need to thrive in this rapidly changing world? How can we successfully address achievement gaps among students within our region and equity gaps that exist? How do we deepen collaborative ties across our high schools? So, you know, a lot of our high schools work in isolation, and we're saying, you know, there are other ways in which we can maybe share some of the exciting ways that we're doing interesting things in our schools. And then how do we strengthen our ability to ensure that we're offering a high quality educational experience for high school students across our entire region? So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're up to, and I'm sure the team is going to fill in some of the very specific activities that we're using to help us to answer those questions.
Sure, yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to say, from the student's perspective, I'd say not a lot of students around the county really see the behind the scenes of what goes on into, our everyday education and all, the wheels that have to turn to make it all happen. And, we're just really grateful for you being able to come on here and kind of show the community this, because again, from students' perspective, it is really beautiful and amazing to see how much care and thought is going into our future. And I think that's really, really impressive. Thank you. Now, Mr. Sharan, what kind of research has your group been doing regarding competencies and literature in the school systems?
So Quinn, it's been an interesting process. As Jake mentioned, the Bar Foundation is sponsoring this. And one of the things that we went over at their initial convening was about it's a community design process. And we're trying to have essentially the review and the research of the literature, as well as the schools and programs that we find exciting. We want that to be a collaborative process as well. So our team began reviewing a lot of research and also looking at various schools. And, we had a whole host of collaborative docs and meetings where we were sharing the things that stand out about different institutions, the things that stand out about different reviews, different things about skills, competencies. So we've been doing that together, both as our core facilitators, the group here, but also with 2 members from each school site in our working team. And we're going to eventually build that out to include another basically 10 people from each site for a design team. And it's a process that, is kind of an ongoing thing. And I don't think we've nailed down exactly the specific direction or things that we, want to, sort of propose or have as ideas, but we are deeply diving into this in a way where we're engaging all people from these different schools and groups to come up with what are the really good things that are going on, whether it's in local schools, national institutions as well. So it's been an interesting process thus far to work with all sorts of people from all over the county, because as Jacob mentioned in the beginning, a lot of us do work in isolation, and this is creating a whole new network of individuals to really think deeply about how schools can be. And it's just a very exciting process.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I think that, highlighting the process behind these sorts of things is a very, very interesting, an interesting kind of thing. And it can really draw out how much time and effort people like yourselves are really putting into this. Now, Dr. Roberts-Morandi, how are you using community engagement to find out data, and what are you doing with that?
It's a great question. Thank you. And I'm always excited to talk about data, because in education, we spend a lot of time talking about what we do, but it doesn't become data until it's written down. So this is a great opportunity for us now to capture a lot of what we've been working on. And Brendan had just referred to a little bit of the work we did earlier around preparing for this. And so we spent a lot of time gathering or planning to gather some additional academic points. And that's the world that we typically live in as educators, right? We spend a lot of time looking at the academic world, but this project right now is giving us the option now to invite in the voice of multiple stakeholders, and especially the people who are, they're less directly connected to our schools. We can now tap into multiple backgrounds that have multiple viewpoints, and they're going to provide us with multiple data points that we wouldn't have otherwise. At this point, we need to know and to understand what the external stakeholders expect from our graduates, rather than to think we know. It's never enough to think we know something, right? We need to be able to prove it, and we owe it to our future graduates to understand what colleges, business and industry are anticipating and needing out of the future. We know, as I had referenced earlier, the academic data. We're familiar with working with demographic data, a lot around course preparation, but we really don't know what the work environment is expecting to need in 15 years. And until we know and we hear from people externally in the community and say, what do you expect out of your citizen? We want to provide you with that as educators help us to define what a citizen is. Tell us what you need as far as college and college readiness and career readiness. So by bringing in the community now, we see this opportunity for richness to really develop around this visioning of the future.
Great, yeah. I just wanted to touch on the fact of you reaching out to so many different demographics that aren't just students and their families. You know, you're really seeing everyone's viewpoint in the long run of this, and I think that's really awesome.
Right.
Now,
thank you.
Go right ahead. Yeah. Now, Mrs. McAvoy, how are you guys exchanging practices and ideas across all the different schools?
So we've actually been very much affected by COVID-19 with this. We originally planned to go and visit one another and see some of the great things that are already happening in Berkshire County. So what we did is we got our larger group together of the core facilitators, of the working team, and we all reported out and shared a presentation on our schools. And from that discussion, a lot of interesting things emerged and a lot of really great ideas that we're interested in sharing more about came up. So for example, Drury right now, this year, experimented with an alternate schedule that allows for flexibility so that kids can participate in dual enrollment and in internships. And so it gives them that flexibility within their schedule so they don't have to worry about coming back to Drury to take their English class 8th period. And so I know there's been a lot of discussion of that kind of thing in Lee. So this is a great way for us to share ideas. I know that Pittsfield was interested in something that we're doing in Lee, which is competency-based grading. We've had that going for a number of years, and Pittsfield is interested in that at this point and would like to see what we're up to. And then finally, we're all interested in this really interesting flexible advisory that they have at Pittsfield High School, where kids have an opportunity throughout the day to participate in clubs, to get extra help from a teacher, to start preparing their college applications. And so it's just a really, really cool idea that no one would have known about had we not had this discussion. So Portrait of a Graduate definitely gives us this opportunity to share what we're doing best and to share resources about that, provide opportunities for others to view what we're doing.
Right. And Mrs. Wadsworth, is there anything that you wanted to touch on?
Let me unmute myself. Dr. Morandi, what are you doing recently? We had a conversation before we started taping, more so tonight, to reach your constituents and your stakeholders for engagement. I find that fascinating.
So part of this whole new online world that we are now educating students in is really understanding the people that are on the delivery side of it. As educators, as teachers, we're used to it being us, and now we're providing all of this content online, and having families really have to do the one-to-one instruction. So again, we need the data to make the most informed decisions we can make. So we began with a survey that went out to all of our families. And from that survey, we were able to pull a number of people who indicated they'd like to be part of a forum. So tonight is the first of 4 forums where we're going to be speaking with family members directly and just asking them about gathering information around what is the experience? What can you provide us with to guide our future decisions? Tell us what's going right. Tell us what's going wrong. Tell us where you'd like to see some improvements made in the way that content is delivered, or what are your children responding to? What kind of are you, or have you really taken it as a launch point and done more with it? So I'm excited about this. You know, it's always good to hear directly from the people who are right now doing the work. And it's another extension of a lot of what we had talked about. And I think to piggyback on something that Ms. McAvoy had stated earlier, in talking about all the work that we're doing across the groups, one of the benefits, I think, of being in Berkshire County is that it's so small that once you've been in education for a handful of years, you know everybody. So you brought together Dr. Eberwein brought us all together. This group of people who we had already had prior working relationships, even though we were in different areas. And so we're engaging in this hard work, this challenging and innovative work together. And when we're bringing in people from outside the community, there's going to be a lot of familiarity to the work that we continue to do here. It's the same thing that we're trying to do tonight too. You know, we're connected in some ways with all of these different families. We now need to just learn to do it virtually, but to come together to share the ideas that we can use to make the most informed decision we can make, so that the experience for the children is the best that it can be. We need our learners to feel as though their environment is what it needs to be in order for them to learn.
Thank you so much for that. Quinn, back to you.
Of course, yeah. So I hear that you guys have a Facebook page that you're using to reach out to members of the community. Mr. Sharon, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Quinn. So we started a Facebook discussion group. It's called Portrait of a Graduate Berkshire Cohort. And what we've been doing just about every week, we've been putting up a question and having, folks respond back to that question. One of those questions was, what was the most meaningful experience you had in high school? And then also the following week was, what was an experience you wish you had in high school to better prepare you for college career or whatever you were hoping to have skills in for that next step. It's been interesting because, we got about 200, a little over 200 people who joined that group very, very quickly. And we're hoping as, kind of the sort of process unfolds and, as we're all stuck in our houses, it might be a nice activity to kind of reconceptualize and think about what school can be like. So we're hoping more people join the group, respond to some of the questions, and comment back with other people and have a really nice dialogue. It's been fascinating because I think, as Kim just mentioned, a lot of us have worked together in different capacities, but even our faculties at our various schools, we might know each other, but it's just fascinating hearing what people would have wanted in a high school experience or what they found the most helpful for them. So yeah, it's Portrait of a Graduate Berkshire Cohort, and we hope more people jump on with it.
Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to touch on? Maybe something that you want to tell the community directly through this platform? If there is, go right ahead.
I'll just offer up that I think everyone has mentioned this in some shape or form, that it's this process that we're building is not really, it's not a top-down process. It's not as if we have a solution sort of preconceived or that we're taking a best solution out in the field. This is really something we're trying to build from the community up. So figuring out what we define as a best possible set of high school experiences, that makes sense to us in our context. But I wanted to point out that we're collecting information a lot of different ways. We're conducting 3 sets of surveys. We've already done 2. So we're surveying recent graduates over the last 5 years. That was something that's kind of interesting. You'd think that being locked down might have stopped some progress, but in some ways it opened up new opportunities for us to access some of our current college students and say, hey, how was your high school? Did it prepare you? What kinds of things would have been useful to know, and what ways were you really well dialed up? We got a lot of really good feedback. Our high school graduates, by the way, our college kids are exceptional, and they love their high schools. They love this region. We just keep telling them to come back. The second thing is we're doing some focus groups, which, as you participated in trying to talk to people in a Zoom-like setting. We found actually those have been pretty powerful. But then finally, we're going to be doing a big summer convening where we're bringing together a large group. It looks like now virtually to sort of discuss and sort of dig into that. But I was going to ask if Jane is willing to maybe offer just a couple of thoughts on the summer convening, because that's kind of a big deal for us, and we're trying to figure out ways in which we can get some stakeholders to the table for that.
Yeah, so our summer convening, which is happening in August, the 21st and 22nd, is where we put all of this together and try to make something out of it. So it's 2 days. On the first day, we are inviting a whole bunch of community stakeholders. So people from business, people from the local social service agencies, members of school committees, town people, parents, and students. And we're going to try to come up with some competencies that we all share in common based on our individual districts and what we value and what is important to us and to our graduates. And then on the second day, we're going to have what we're calling a design team, which is a fairly large group of teachers and other educators from different districts. We're going to have 10 per school. And we are going to try to develop a plan going forward. We're going to try to narrow down what these competencies are, what this portrait of a graduate looks like, and then we're going to start talking about how to do it, or start drafting the plan for that. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing what you guys all get together. And it was an honor to be able to be a part of one of your focus groups and kind of get that information to you guys. Well, so thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Andrea.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So I send the questions ahead of time so we have no surprises, but then there's always a follow-up. So as I was, I have two today. So the first one, for all of you, all 5 of you, can you tell the viewing community what was your most powerful moment or time in high school that melded you into the direction or the person you are today? And I'll start with Quinn.
Wow, really throw me on the spot here. I'd have to say probably it's not one singular thing. I'd have to say it's all of the interpersonal connections I've been able to develop over my years in high school. I mean, I started from a younger age. I transferred over to the Lee Public School District in the middle of my 8th grade year. And from that moment, I was able to start making friends, start building connections with my teachers, and start becoming a part of the school family. So I really think that, all of the opportunities that I've had to meet and speak with new people have really shaped me into the person I am today.
Great answer, Quinn. I'm going to go in the way that I see you on my screen. So Mrs. McAvoy.
So I am an English teacher today, and I'm really passionate about social justice, as many people know. And so one of the greatest things that happened to me when I was in high school that led me along this path was a great teacher, Dr. Cheryl Nelson, who was my English teacher. And so she really pushed me in terms of writing and in terms of reading great literature. She made a reader and a writer out of me. But also she was very, very passionate about issues relating to social justice, race, sex, all kinds of things in that nature. And she not only did that, but she lived the example. She was out there marching and fighting this and fighting that. And so she was a really positive role model for me, and definitely one of the most positive experiences I had in high school. Another thing that Cheryl Nelson did in order to encourage us is we wanted to start a literary newspaper when we were in school, and she empowered us to do that. We hadn't had one before, and so she put a couple of us in charge, and we just did it, and it was really awesome. So I would say Dr. Cheryl Nelson.
That is an excellent story. Thank you so much. What an impact. What an impact. Dr. Eberwein?
Sure, yeah, actually, I answered this prompt on the Facebook page. So I'm all dialed up for it. But mine was actually, I learned how to fail. So I had a miserable experience in calculus my senior year. And I was like probably a lot of us, didn't have to work too hard in high school. And I got to calculus and didn't know how to work, didn't know how to fail, didn't know how to work through and learn something. And I was, again, to Jane's point, was incredibly supported by a very influential teacher, Mrs. Shipp, who I think to this day had a huge influence on my ability to understand what it meant to work hard, to work through something, how to fail, but understand that you can keep getting up and you can ultimately be successful if you just keep working at it. So yeah, it was one of those experiences where I got that report card that I didn't want to share with my parents that first quarter of senior year. And by the last quarter, it was looking pretty good. So, and then I got to college and aced it right through. So thanks to her, and that was a certainly important moment.
Thank you, Mrs. Shipp. That is lovely. Mr. Sharon?
So I think mine is sort of kind of about the collective experience. So, you know, it's interesting for me because I'm a assistant principal at Pittsfield High. I taught there and I actually went there. And one of the things about my high school experience, it was just the amount of choice and options that were sort of afforded to us in terms of programs and options for classes, because, you know, the school, about 900, 1,000 students, you have a lot of opportunities there, you know, and as a student, as you moved up through a school of that size, you know, you have a little more freedom in your course selection. And I never felt restricted. I felt like I could take essentially whatever I wanted. And that took me in high school into computer programming. It took me into, you know, going through Spanish, as well as doing things like AP Government and AP Psychology. So I just felt I had a pretty, you know, wide range of opportunity. And not that even some of those opportunities I even did really that well at, and that was, I think, okay. I tell the story sometimes about my experience with AP programming. The following year, I had the same teacher for a different elective, and he went around the room and said, "John, you got a 5. James, you got a 3. Brendan, you took the test. Good job." And, you know, it didn't even really matter, but the experience. And I think that even though, you know, I didn't excel in that area, I use all of these things in my work today and in my life. So I think that just providing those opportunities for kids to explore, I think that was a good thing.
Thank you so much. I love that, because there's a connection between kids who do well in school and kids that sometimes need other opportunities, and they all end up with a path that is right for them. So thank you for that. Dr. Morandi.
Thank you. So I think, like we've already heard said here from a couple of people, sometimes it's not just the one experience that stands out. High school was fantastic. I loved it. I'd go back, do it again if I could. It was just a fantastic time, right? Because you're growing, you're developing, you're learning so much about yourself as a learner and as a person. One situation that really stands out was during a softball game. And it was a really close game, and it was a playoff game. And I was on third base. I'm going to tell you, I was never the fastest runner. Still I'm not. But there was a pass ball at the plate, barely by the catcher, and I broke for home and got about 3/4 of the way there, and the catcher came up with the ball. And I thought it was ball 4. In the end, I lost count. I thought the count was 3-2 when I was going and breaking for home. It was 2-2, and I'm staring at the ball, and the catcher ends up throwing it behind me, and I scored. But what stands out is that the coach immediately had me report to the behind the bench for a little talking to, and thank you, Kathy Rivers-Millard, because I really deserve that. And she just said, "I had asked you if you knew the count. I had checked with all of my runners. You said you shook your head yes. Never lose the count, Kim. Never lose the count." And I've thought about that so many times, and still sometimes when I see her, we've talked about it, because it became something that all through life is what I've remembered. And not because that one game was everything, but it was the lesson that I learned in that moment, right? Just never lose the count. Know where you are, know where you need to be. And if you don't know, ask.
Wow, those are like really powerful stories. Thank you so much. So I wasn't going to share mine, but now I feel like I need to. I was not a great student. I did not love high school. I think of this situation, and I often think, geez, if I was a senior, I would be like, yes, I got out in March. But you know, that's not a good way to think of COVID. But I had a teacher named Mr. Clark, and he was my algebra teacher, and he actually inspired me for public speaking, which is not where you think algebra would be. But as a senior, he had me speak to a freshman class. And we talked about math and the impacts of how it has on everyday work, and how, you know, you create a recipe or you balance your checkbook, and math functions into that. And his willingness to let me speak to that class lit a fire of public service for me and also for public speaking. So to this day, when I see him, I refer to him as Mr. Clark because he owns and earns that respect. He molded a student who was never going to be spectacular for their senior year, but later in life used what he taught me to do wonderful things. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for joining us. Here is what I'd like to say to the people involved in a portrait of a graduate. You are making an impact. You are the leaders today that we are looking for and at, and we appreciate you for everything you're doing. Your stories today are going to impact the people that hear this segment. And I wish you well in your journey for this. I know your outcomes will make an impact for the students in Berkshire County. And we are so appreciative of you doing this work. So thank you so much for your time today and for all you do across Berkshire County. Excellent. Dr. Everwine, thank you for bringing this group together.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity today. It was fantastic. So
you guys are true rock stars, really. I mean, I'm just like, look at all they're doing. People need to hear this, your story. So really, thank you. Thank you. Excellent. So we're going to sign off for now. Until next time, our next segment will be with the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, and we will be joined with Dr. Jason McCandless and a parent of 2 children who are remote learning at Central Berkshire, and Quinn, a remote learning student also. So thank you everyone for the segment, and I hope you get lots of results for a portrait of a graduate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.